first, at the very bottom level, consistent and ring-fenced funding is needed. It's needed just to maintain services, let alone improve services, so providers know what funding they can actually rely on every year. Funding is needed to update the expired model of care, which was never actually completed anyways. It's needed to hire and train more staff. It's needed to address recruitment and retention issues. It's needed to provide a sufficient level of outpatient services, so hopefully people will never have to go inpatient. And it's needed to expand the specialist eating disorder teams that we were promised in the model of care. Sufficient level of staff is hugely important because when there's not enough staff, it's a huge disservice to care. It leads to incomplete teams, staff burnout and stress, closure of beds, and long wait lists. So staff are needed to reduce and hopefully someday eliminate comms wait lists, complete outpatient teams and specialist eating disorder teams, and to reopen beds. For example, in Lindera, half the amount of beds were closed temporarily, and they're still closed because there's not enough staff. And in the model of care, we were promised a total of 23 beds for adults, and we still have 3 beds for adults for the entire country. So the stepped model of care is also urgently needed. This is what the model of care talks about a stepped model looking like. So at the bottom level, you have all of your outpatient services, and then you have medical treatment if required, and then day patient, which is really missing from care at the moment. So it's kind of a hybrid between outpatient and inpatient services. So you have an intensive day treatment, and then you can go home at night to your family. So you have the mix of the professional support and your family support as well. So that can help. I really strongly believe that would help people from becoming institutionalized by being inpatient long-term. So then at the top of the model, you have the psychiatric full inpatient, and then stepped down again, it should be stepped down. So right now, you basically just go from hospital to home, and that's it. No support, straight back to comms. And even then, there mightn't be a psychologist or a dietitian or people readily available. So we really need the stepped model of care because, as Kira said, the transition from hospital to home is extremely traumatizing, and it's jarring for somebody who's spent a long time in hospitals to just go straight home. So practically, these are a few kind of practical examples that we thought. So like at very bottom levels, an assignment of a key worker. Like theoretically, everybody has a key worker when they're in comms or ALMS, but like I don't know if I ever personally met my daughter's key worker. A care plan needs to be created and shared with families, and early interventions, information, and supports should be provided for sufferers and parents in the very early stages. Meal supports and coaching can also be vital learning for parents in the very beginning, and therapy should be provided from the onset the second you go to the GP. Currently, there is an inconsistent level of treatment across comms and patient units as well. There's 2 facilities in the country that provide NG feeding if required, so that leads to serious access issues. So every single comms facility should be providing NG feeding if required. And then a pathway for people who are neurodivergent, they find very little help, and especially very little individual help for their different needs. So at the very top level, the key worker still needs to be involved every single step of the way, advocating for that person's care and making sure that their care plan is being met. Therapy is needed whether you're hospitalized or not. Meal support is needed whether you're hospitalized or not. There needs to be recourse or advocacy services for families when the level of care is not sufficient. Nobody can find help if there's problems with care. And there needs to be very clear communication regarding treatment plans. So this is all why we think there needs to be a specialized eating disorder center with actual trained, knowledgeable staff. There needs to be physical and mental health treatment that co-occurs because right now they're so separate, and it's a mental illness, and the mental illness aspect is not being treated properly. There needs to be no catchment restrictions in these facilities. It should be treatment based on your illness, not treatment based on where you live. And it's a better use of funding than a disjointed, disconnected services that sees people in care long term. they would have a better chance of recovery with consistent care, not constantly changing teams or changing hospital environments and jumping between inpatient and outpatient and hospitalization. And as you can see from the map that Lauren put together here, these are the beds that currently exist in the country. So you can see they're catchment based. As I said, I lived in Dublin and I still couldn't access care. So imagine what people in the middle of the country where there's no dots, imagine what their care looks like. So I wanted to do this last slide to remember some of the people that were lost to this illness. We have Kathy, and her mom sent me this poem that she wrote just before she passed away. And she wrote, "The beautiful butterfly, flying high, unaware of its beauty and unsure of its wings." And Michelle, who recently passed away and whose photograph is not here because she placed more importance on what was on the inside rather than what was on the outside. These people were lost to the system and they deserved better. This is why we urgently need help.